All right, I'm live. What's up? So it's been a long 2 weeks. Last week, my live stream was on Thursday because I was moving and I'm still kind of moving. So I'm exhausted. I haven't been sleeping enough. But you know what? I got a coffee. So it's all going to be good. Or we'll see if it's going to be good. There are so many stories I'm going to cover today that I may go over my usual hour and a half. I don't know. We'll see what happens. And I will take super chats always, as I always do at the end. But man, I'm just looking over some of the schedule now. So let me give you a little preview of what's going to be coming up in this next hour and a half, 2 hours. Some MSNBC stuff. So I'm going to touch on a positive story, or I should say not even a positive, an objective story that MSNBC did about Bernie Sanders. And also this clip from Chuck Todd that I will get to. Look, it's hard not to be hyperbolic, but I don't think I am. It may be the dumbest 2 minutes in all of MSNBC history. So we're going to get to that clip. Also, Hillary Clinton discusses a wealth tax and also takes shots at Warren's Medicare for All. We'll get to that. I'm also going to discuss Jeremy Corbyn, show a few videos. There's an upcoming general election in the UK. And some other stuff. Wall Street Journal claims Medicare for All will lead to overuse of healthcare. As a Canadian, I will break that down. And just the complete absurdity of all of it. Also, some Nancy Pelosi stuff. Sanders surging in the polls. Man, what else do we got here? Former governor of Wisconsin, Scott Walker, worried that Bernie can win. And Netflix CEO has some comments that kind of exposes exactly what's wrong with corporate America. All right. Where should we start? How about I start here? Look at this new graphic I got. rationalnational.com/join. That takes you to the Patreon page if you want to support the show. YouTube right now is demonetizing us like crazy. I'm seeing a lot more videos get demonetized. Now, usually when videos get demonetized, I mean, this shows you how broken YouTube's algorithm is. 99% of the time, if a video of mine gets demonetized and I appeal it, it gets remonetized after appeal. So the ads come back after about 24 hours once they view the video and see there's nothing wrong with it. But the issue is when you covered news, most of your views come within the first 24 hours. So most of my views are demonetized, and then after 24 hours, whatever views I have left to get in that video get monetized. But it just shows you why YouTube channels, especially ones that cover news, can't rely on YouTube ad revenue. So we need your support. rationalnational.com/join gets you to the Patreon page. You can also become a YouTube member. I'm just less of a fan of that because YouTube gets a cut of that money, and because YouTube is screwing us over so thoroughly, I don't like giving YouTube too much money. But if you're a YouTube member, nothing against you. You're awesome. Just letting you know that I prefer Patreon. All right. Just checking the chat and make sure everything's going well. Audio's good. Cool. Yes, talk about Lula. So I haven't been covering this or haven't following the story all that closely, but apparently Lula is going to be or is released from prison today. I have to read more about it before I report on it, but that's a good piece of news. Okay. So again, super chats at the end. Maybe I'll take some randomly during the show. I'm not too sure, but we'll see what I get to. Okay, let's start. Let's start with a positive story, okay? Positive. Let's start happy. Let me just set this clip up. So we're used to seeing MSNBC and the mainstream press as a whole take shots at or completely ignore Bernie Sanders. But this recent segment on MSNBC actually covered Bernie Sanders objectively. So this shouldn't be a news story for me, but because this is so rare, this is a news story. So let me show you exactly what happened here. So watch this clip. I think you're going to be, if you haven't seen this yet, you will be surprised at how not terrible this is.
Let's cross over to Shaquille Brewster, who can give us a pulse, really, of the potential and the momentum that is now behind Senator Sanders after his heart attack scare, some of these key endorsements that he is picking up from highly popular representatives, members of the squad. How is that actually translating on the ground and in the polls?
Well, the campaign is trying to highlight that here today, right now. We're still waiting for Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and Senator Sanders to take the stage and address this crowd of several thousands here in Minneapolis. Prince's longtime band actually opened things up, the New Power Generation. It was another celebrity endorsement, another political endorsement for a candidate that's on the rise and trying to show he's campaigning with a new energy.
Corporate greed has got to go. Hey, hey.
Bernie Sanders is recharged.
And to stand up to the whole damn 1%.
Back on the trail after being sidelined by a heart attack, Sanders is back in 2016 form, drawing thousands while rallying with most of the squad: Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, and Rashida Tlaib.
We deserve Bernie Sanders.
New Iowa and New Hampshire polling showing his support also making a comeback. On the road, Sanders has been more jovial.
I've been criticized for being old. I plead guilty. I am old.
But also more aggressive.
The people of Iowa, New Hampshire, and America deserve a real clash of ideas. All right? So, of course, I'll be critical of Joe when I disagree with him. Joe supported the bankruptcy bill. I thought that was a terrible bill.
He's also become more personal, increasingly matching voter stories with his own.
Some of my earliest memories are watching my parents fight about money.
Those arguments that took place in my house as a kid, they seared me. All right? You had them at 8 years old, so did I. And that's true all over this country.
And much of the conversation this weekend was actually focused on Senator Sanders' signature policy, campaign policy of Medicare for all. I'm told that he and Senator Warren actually had a phone call over the weekend, about 5 minutes long. It shows you that the campaign is trying to show, despite the differences in how to pay for that plan, they're trying to show they're still on the same page.
All right. That was crazy in how objective that actually was. Now, you could take some issue with, the media loves to focus on the heart attack. Okay. To be super, for me to try and be objective here, if it was someone else in the race that had a heart attack, I could see why the media would bring it up all the time. Okay, perfectly fine. But honestly, this was a great segment. And this is just objective reporting. This isn't fawning over Bernie Sanders like they do over other candidates like Pete Buttigieg. This is just objectively showing what the Bernie Sanders campaign is doing and how, in fact, yes, they are surging. But because this is so rare on cable news, especially on MSNBC, it stands out. And it makes us think, wow, look at this. MSNBC doing fantastic coverage. But let's get back to what MSNBC normally does, because this is Chuck Todd today. I'm going to reset here. Chuck Todd today, or not today, yesterday. I mean, if you haven't seen this clip, I read some of the quotes from what this clip was. I was reading down the points from the tweet that tweeted it out, and it didn't do it justice. When I actually watched the full clip, it blew my damn mind because Chuck Todd has got to be the dumbest person alive. All right, let me properly set this up. MSNBC host Chuck Todd left his panel speechless over his stupidity. Now, this clip, look, I try not to be too over the top, but I really think this is one of the dumbest 2 minutes in MSNBC history, as far as I've seen. I rarely have I seen something so dumb that even the other people on the panel don't know what to say. So you have to watch this. It is just incredible, and it really shows you why Chuck Todd should not have a show on this network or any network. Check this out.
Guns and climate.
Sorry, before I set it up, or before I play it, he's talking about Michael Bloomberg. So Michael Bloomberg just announced, or he's going to apparently announce that he's going to run for president because they know this. He has to file early in Alabama to run in the primary there. So that's how it leaked out that he will likely be running for president in the Democratic primary. So that's what this is based on. Now watch Chuck Todd's analysis of Michael Bloomberg running for the Democratic nomination.
Guns and climate. Who's to his left?
Well, Beto was to his left on guns, but he's not going to be a factor any longer.
Right? I mean, so...
Also the governor of
you can make an argument that
Bloomberg has embraced the Green New
I don't think he's embraced that. I agree.
So that's one area where he actually is more to the center than she is.
You know, in the smoke-filled room, you'd say, on paper, Bloomberg has the right balance of what you want to win a broad election. Maybe not a deep election, but if you're trying to win the ex-suburban Republican, which, by the way, Michael Bloomberg's an ex-suburban, arguably an ex-urban Republican, and at the same time, you care about these core progressive issues like guns and climate, it ain't just somebody buying an election.
I'm trying to think of Michael Bloomberg as the nominee in Western Pennsylvania.
I know what you're thinking.
The suburbs of Michigan, the Michigan suburbs, the Ohio suburbs, the Wisconsin suburbs.
By the way, there's only one running mate for him.
Huh?
It's the same running mate Joe Biden has to pick, and it's the same running mate Pete Buttigieg has to pick. It's Stacey Abrams, by the way. There's nobody else that Bloomberg can match up with if someone got this nomination than Stacey Abrams.
Why?
Yes. I think he has to have a person of color.
Huh?
I think he needs a diversity on the ticket, person of color, no?
I don't know what he would need. I'm just trying to think of Bloomberg selling nationally in the nitty-gritty of the key swing places. Maybe he can.
Look, I didn't think New York
mayor.
But I didn't think New York City. Right. But I thought that was a problem for Trump. Like, I think we all thought New York City doesn't sell in America, and yet what were the two nominees?
Well, Trump was the candidate. Trump was the candidate from The Apprentice. He wasn't the candidate from New York.
I just think the New York
and the guy that talks their language, which Michael Bloomberg doesn't.
Right. No, but I do think that I don't think that's going to be as problematic.
I think
as it
Republicans,
could have been even a decade.
No, Republicans are ready to hit him on the two issues you just said, right? Climate and guns. They're going to paint him as Elizabeth Warren. He is that extreme, is what they're going to say.
Sure, but Elizabeth Warren's going to paint him as a closet right winger. So in some ways, he could be bookended well. Maybe.
Before we get to the general, though, there is the primary. And when you think about Bloomberg's entry in relationship to the Democratic primary rules.
Okay. The clip ends there. I wish it didn't. You can only find this clip on Twitter. I mean, maybe it's posted now, but I was looking earlier. MSNBC did not post this anywhere. They didn't post it on Twitter. Someone else recorded it off their television and posted it. They didn't post it on their website, on YouTube. And it's obvious why. I mean, Chuck Todd looks like a total buffoon. There are so many. Let me get his face up here. Actually, there are some great moments, some great faces here, especially when the camera holds on. I'm not sure who this lady is, but after Chuck Todd says something really dumb, it stays in her face for a minute, and she's just like, "What?" And then this guy here. Let me get his name up, because I was able to find him. So this is Howard Feynman. So Howard Feynman, he's just grinning and bearing it through this whole thing. That's pretty much everyone's expression on the panel while Chuck Todd is talking. I mean, the idea that Michael Bloomberg is far left, that he's going to challenge Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders from the left, how out of touch do you have to be? And at the same time he's saying that, Chuck Todd is also saying, well, he'll also get those suburban Republican voters. If Bloomberg is further left than Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, from what you're saying, why is he going to get Republican suburban voters? Like, what are you even talking about? I mean, I had to make notes because there is so much stupidity spread throughout this entire clip here. The Stacey Abrams quote. was incredibly uncomfortable. Let's see if we could find that one again. That was something special.
And you care about these core progressive issues.
And so he brings it up. So this other guy, Feynman, is talking about how Bloomberg's a horrible candidate. Chuck Todd butts in while this guy's talking to say, by the way, you know who his VP is going to be? Oh, Michael Bloomberg is going to choose Stacey Abrams, just like Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg. And the whole panel goes silent.
It ain't just somebody.
Pennsylvania.
I know what you're thinking.
The suburbs of Michigan, the Michigan suburbs, the Ohio suburbs, the Wisconsin suburbs.
By the way, there's only one running mate for him.
Huh?
It's the same running mate Joe Biden has to pick, and it's the same running mate Pete Buttigieg has to pick. It's Stacey Abrams, by the way. There's nobody else that Bloomberg can match up with if he someone got this nomination than Stacey Abrams.
Why?
Yes?
Panel goes silent. Only response is why and huh. Look, does Chuck Todd only know of one black woman? I mean, that's what this sounds like. Okay, I understand the idea. You want a person of color on the ticket. Why does it have to be Stacey Abrams for all three of these candidates? I mean, how does this guy host a show? The other panelists must think the same thing. There must, I swear to God, behind the scenes, there has to be, people have to recognize that out of everybody on this network, look, I get, you know, Morning Joe, the Morning Joe crew, Mika and Joe Scarborough, they have their issues, but they have a particular worldview of the wealthy, and that's what they protect, and they protect that well. Chuck Todd, if that's supposed to be his job, he's not doing it very well because he just comes off like a total buffoon, reaching for straws, has no idea what he's actually talking about, calls Michael Bloomberg far left, says Stacey Abrams has to be on the ticket out of nowhere for no reason, discusses how, oh, well, I mean, if you're from New York City, it used to be an issue, but since Trump won, now anybody from New York City can win. Trump won because he was a celebrity from The Apprentice, and he spoke to xenophobia and racism that a lot of white voters felt, and also was sort of an anti-establishment candidate for people that didn't know any better. I mean, Trump winning doesn't mean every single person now from New York City is going to win an election. He is so, and then he ends on the book-ended thing. So because he would get attacked from Elizabeth Warren from the left, again, completely ignoring Bernie Sanders in the entire conversation, but because he would be attacked from the left and from the right, well, he's book-ended well. Is he a book or is he a person? Why is being attacked from both sides a positive thing? This is just unbelievable. But this is MSNBC. So that's why, even though I think this is one of the dumbest clips I've seen of all time on this network, it's hard to say because a lot of what happens on MSNBC is just like this. It's based in no actual data. It's just pulled out of thin air. It's consistently protecting the wealthiest people in the country, and the arguments completely fall apart when you actually lay them out and discuss them. And when you get to a point where even the other panelists on the show don't know what the hell to say because what you're saying is so stupid, clearly Chuck Todd maybe shouldn't have a show. I want to see if the chat's saying anything about this because my reaction, like when I first saw this, I was just blown away. I could not stop laughing. I was laughing and speechless at the same time. Yeah. Bullwhip says, stop trying to make Bloomberg a thing. Totally. All right. There's a lot of chats here. I can't go through them all. But this is, I'm going to have to go back to this clip over and over again because it is, it's like a class in how horrible the media can actually be. Let me get to, and I don't want to get too much into Bloomberg either. I covered it yesterday. This is a candidate, Michael Bloomberg. Where is he going to go? I mean, what's his constituency? We've seen Howard Schultz completely crash and burn. Tom Steyer go nowhere. Michael Bloomberg is going to come out and all of a sudden be able to garner all this energy and win. Like, I don't even know what world do these people live in. They are so detached from reality. I cannot wait until Bernie Sanders wins this primary. And these people on television are going to say, no one saw this coming. Nobody saw this coming. Who could have seen that the guy with the most individual donations, the most volunteers, the most grassroots support by far, who could have seen that this candidate would have so much energy to win the primary? They just completely ignore all that data. They completely ignore all the polls that I'll get to in a second showing Bernie Sanders doing very well and surging. Just, yeah. All right, let's get to the next. Somebody, when I retweeted that video on Twitter, somebody replied saying I had to lay down after that. That's kind of how I felt from watching that clip. I had to go lay down and just collect my thoughts. It is just out of this world. All right, let's get to Hillary Clinton, because we haven't had enough of Hillary Clinton. Whoa, I'm on smooth transition. By the way, I saw some super chats pop up. I will get to them. Actually, maybe I'll get to a couple now if I can find it. I just heard another one. All right. Anti-Bland sends a super chat saying, in today's political milieu, mainstream media objectively feels far left. Yeah. Wait, what? Mainstream media objectively feels far left. I don't know what... The media feels far left to you? Am I reading this properly? Mind of the North Star sends a super chat. Thank you for your super chat. I don't see a message, but thank you. All right, I'll get to these others afterwards. Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton. Actually, we got a couple from Hillary Clinton today. A couple things I want to discuss here. So during an interview, Hillary Clinton came out against a wealth tax and also took shots at Elizabeth Warren. So a lot to discuss here. Let's first get to what she said about the wealth tax.
Mm-hmm. Do you support a wealth tax?
You know, I don't know the details of it. I hear about it. I hear what it would cover. I don't understand the mechanism that would be required. I would prefer to go the approach that I put forth when I ran. You know, that was, you know, I'm not against, you know, raising rates. I'm not against, you know, getting rid of things like carried interest, which I think have, you know, gone way past their sell date. And there's a lot of other things that I would be very willing to support. I just don't understand how that could work, and I don't see other examples anywhere in the world where it has actually worked over a long period of time. We used to have a wealth tax. It was called the estate tax. I would be all in favor of reinstating the estate tax because that is much more measurable. It is not as disruptive. You know, if you were going to do a wealth tax, and it was on assets, which as I understand it is what they're looking to do.
What they're looking to do with
How you would value it is, you know, I think complicated to start with, but assume you could get some system of valuation. People would literally have to sell assets to pay the tax on the assets that they owed before the wealth tax was levied. That would be incredibly disruptive. So I think there are other ways to raise the revenues and ways that do get those who are well off to pay more, because I do think we've got to have that as part of our effort to combat inequality and to, you know, really, I think it would do more to jumpstart, you know, people's initiative and get back to a feeling we're all in this together. So I just think there are better ways of doing it.
What? There is zero reason why you can't bring in a wealth tax. She says, well, how would you value that? How do you value the estate tax? I mean, what the hell's the difference? So, but it'd be too disruptive. I mean, if Jeff Bezos has his money in stocks, well, he's got to sell his stocks for the wealth tax. Okay. You know what's more disruptive? People that can't afford food, people that can't afford housing, people that aren't being paid enough, people that go bankrupt because of medical bills, people that have student loan debt holding them down. That's more disruptive than Jeff Bezos selling his stock or assets or whatever the hell he has. So this is just a complete disconnect from reality. And of course, Hillary Clinton would be directly impacted by a wealth tax. It's a good reason why she's not in favor of it. Now, on top of this, she also took shots at Medicare for all. So let me show you this headline from The Hill here. Hillary Clinton says Warren's Medicare for all plan would never get enacted. Now, this is coming from the person who got Elizabeth Warren to endorse her. So Elizabeth Warren back in 2016 took a lot of crap from the left because she would not come out publicly and endorse Bernie Sanders during the primary. She ended up holding her endorsement until the very end when it was clear Hillary was going to win the nomination, and then she endorsed Hillary Clinton. This is what Elizabeth Warren held out for. Elizabeth Warren endorsed Hillary and gets this in return. Gets Hillary taking shots at her Medicare for all plan. This is why you can't simply have conversations with the wealthy. You can't simply talk it out. It's not going to work that way. This is about a fight over power. The people that have all the wealth and all the power, like Hillary Clinton, for example, or like Bill Gates, are not simply going to be able to, are not simply going to compromise when you sit down and talk with them. They're going to try and convince you of their worldview, which is also another issue with private fundraisers, which is why Bernie Sanders has completely sworn off private fundraising. He understands it's human nature to be impacted by your environment. So Bernie surrounds himself with people in unions, with workers, with the average American. People like Hillary Clinton surround themselves with other wealthy people, and that is their worldview. And Warren has tried to play both sides. And when you try and play both sides, you're not going to make anybody happy. And the powerful, like Hillary Clinton, will continue to attack you as long as you're not doing what is in their best favor. So Warren got absolutely nothing out of holding out in 2016 and endorsing Hillary Clinton. Even if Hillary came out and endorsed Warren, it wouldn't help Elizabeth Warren because Hillary Clinton is deeply unliked, especially in left-wing circles. So if Warren's trying to, get the base, she's going to lose the base with a Hillary Clinton endorsement. But even with that, to not even be able to acknowledge that, hey, maybe we should have Medicare for all. Maybe all these other countries have it. And look, this is really what the issue is. Hillary was not able to pass a single payer system back in the 90s. She failed. So now she doesn't want anyone else to do it. If anybody else does it, then they'll get the credit that she thinks she deserves. This is a common theme with Hillary Clinton. Look who she picked as her running mate in 2016. Tim Kaine. There are so many other options she could have chosen, but she chose somebody who was completely milquetoast because she wanted to be the one to stand out on the ticket. So if she chose someone who was Latino, like Julian Castro, or chose anybody with some personality, somebody that was kind of interesting somewhat, they could have taken the spotlight away from her. She didn't want that. She loves the spotlight. Hillary Clinton is in this for herself. Now, maybe back in the 90s, she was a different politician. She actually cared and she fought for people. But along the way, that clearly changed. As she surrounded herself more and more with people that were elites, the wealthiest people, the people that are the most powerful in the country, she completely changed her worldview. It impacted her, obviously. And now she is this person, this wealthy person, who is going to go on here and criticize a wealth tax and Medicare for all, even though these are two ideas that someone that endorsed her in 2016, Elizabeth Warren, supports. And that's enough of her. There are many, there were former, actually I want to share this. This is an extension of this. So in addition to Hillary Clinton saying Medicare for all is not going to work, listen to this self-described reformed healthcare insurance executive, Wendell Potter. He disagrees with Hillary Clinton. So here's what he said in a Twitter thread about single payer. I appreciate Hillary Clinton's honesty in her assessment of the power of the insurance industry. As a former industry spinmeister, let me tell you why I now disagree. Hillary is remembering what happened in the 90s when I worked at Humana and we tanked the nation's first attempt at single payer since the famed Nixon-Kennedy failure. The industry came out with what are now its greatest hits, like dubbing what we now call Medicare for All government-run healthcare. Public opinion that had been rising in support of single payer dropped like a rock. Fast forward 25 years and the industry play now is the same as it was then. Why then should Hillary Clinton expect to feel any differently about passage of single payer? A few reasons. One, a majority of Americans who receive health insurance through their employer now say they support a switch to Medicare for All. Two, a majority of small business owners support Medicare for All. 96% of small employers already don't offer health insurance because it's too expensive, but this is still important. Three, the number of Americans receiving health care insurance through an employer is falling, and now close to 50%, down from closer to 70% 2 decades ago. Four, and those that do get coverage through an employer increasingly find it too expensive. The average family insurance plan now costs more than $20,000 annually. That's insane. Five, and furthermore, those people find it too expensive to use. Nearly 100 million Americans are now underinsured, meaning their deductibles and copays are so high they can't afford to go to a doctor or hospital if they need to. And six here, a majority of Americans support Medicare for All even after it had been attacked. Simply remind people their OOP costs, out-of-pocket expenses, premiums, and deductibles will go away, and they're all for it. Finally, this is harder to track. We didn't have politicians like Bernie Sanders and Warren 10 and 25 years ago with the power those two have now. Their social media followings, their email lists, the media they draw, it all contributes to getting out the truth about the broken for-profit health insurance system the industry was able to lie about for years. There's now a chorus of voices led by Sanders and Warren that are saying enough. The industry can't beat that with lobbyists or campaign cash, and politicians like Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg who keep defending the insurance industry will go down with them when this system collapses. So this is former health insurance, industry spinmeister. So this guy used to fight back against single-payer healthcare. He has now seen the light, maybe feels bad about what he did back then, and is now being honest about where the country needs to go on healthcare. And as I like to remind people, I live under a single-payer system in Canada. It is fantastic. My only complaints is that it doesn't go far enough. We don't have dental care guaranteed to us, and we don't have universal pharmacare. But apart from that, the actual usage of like how healthcare works is incredible. If I'm sick, I make a same-day appointment. I wake up, I call my doctor. I see my doctor that day. If she's not available, I could make an appointment with a different doctor, or I can go to any walk-in clinic and see a doctor then. I just walk in, show my health card, walk out. That's it. No expenses, no out-of-pocket expenses, nothing. And when it comes to prescription drugs, when I have got a prescription, the most I paid for them is like $20. Now, clearly, I don't have a serious illness. If you have a serious illness, it is a little more expensive, though it's less expensive than what Americans pay. I believe it's 10 to 1 when it comes to insulin. So that gives you kind of an idea of the cost difference. So, and I also had surgery once. I booked it ahead of time, went and got my surgery, came home. That was it. No, nothing. No phone calls with insurance companies, no paperwork, just nothing. I go and I leave. That's how this works. So the simplicity of it really is a huge selling point because it's something you never have to think about anymore. It's just there. It's done. If you need it, it's there. And when it comes to working, or when it comes to your career, say you're in a job you don't enjoy and you want to leave your job, but maybe you have good health insurance through your employer, so you stay in that job. Well, now you're freed up under a single payer system because it's insured by the government. You can just leave that job, go back to school, start a business, find a new job, whatever, stay unemployed while you're looking for a new job, and you still have health insurance because it's a single payer system. It's guaranteed to you no matter what. There's endless benefits. If you're a small a small business and you can't afford to give your employees health care, it doesn't matter now because they have health care through a single payer system. I mean, we can go on and on. It's endlessly beneficial. And there is a reason why all these countries, once they move to a universal system, they don't go back to a private insurance system, because universal systems work. And they don't only work, they also cost less. Canada spends half of what Americans spend per capita on healthcare. There's just no arguing against it anymore. Okay. I think I heard some super chats. Let me hit some of those up. Again, I try to get to most of these super chats at the end, but sometimes they're about the topic, so I'd rather hit them soon than later. Cretan Satterwhite sends a super chat with no message. Thank you. Balthazar, I think I said your name right, says Bloomberg winning is as likely as Epstein killing himself. Yeah. Yeah. Though I would say Bloomberg winning is even less likely. Sean Kennedy sends a super chat saying, have you seen Nancy, I think you meant Nancy Pelosi, clip from 1993 expressing concern about Bill Clinton's health bill because it wasn't single payer? Yes. Actually, I'm going to show that. Maybe I'll get to that next. But let me get to some of these other ones. Kevin McAlpine says, did Warren just get cucked by Clinton? She did indeed. Chris in Dallas sends a super chat saying, when I see Hillary, my period starts and I'm male. No comment. Anti-Bland again sends a super chat saying, David, you misread my super chat. Objectivity. Your earlier super chat. What'd you say? In today's political milieu, mainstream media objectivity feels far left. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I did read it wrong. Yeah, 'cause the first video I showed where they were being somewhat objective, or they were being objective of the Bernie Sanders campaign, it felt like it was, kind of far left, or not far left, but it felt like, hey, they're actually on his side for once, when in reality, they were just being objective. But yes, thank you for that clarification. All right, I'll get to more after. Let's get to a lot of great stories today. Let's do some Jeremy Corbyn. How about that? Let's go from crappy Hillary to awesome Jeremy. What's great too about these Hillary Clinton clips now, I feel like people that maybe supported her in 2016 are coming around a little bit and are seeing now why people fought so hard for Bernie Sanders. I mean, you see Peter Dow. If you're on Twitter, Peter Dow was one of the biggest Bernie Sanders critics in 2016. I mean, that guy was incredibly annoying. I think I muted him back then. But now he's completely changed, and he's actually supporting Bernie Sanders. He sort of has now seen the light and understands, wow, he was a nut back then. And clearly Bernie is offering a different kind of politics that won't simply beat Donald Trump, but will actually transform the country and transform it in a way where people won't go back and vote for someone like Donald Trump again. So that's another big thing people aren't really considering when talking about electability. Because first of all, Bernie Sanders is the most electable candidate in the race by far. You look at head-to-head matchups in these various states, Bernie oftentimes is first in head-to-head matchups against Trump. But even apart from that, you need a candidate that once they win, you're not just going to get a new kind of version of Trump in 4 years. You need someone that will actually transform the country, will actually change people's lives for the better, will actually fight for them. If you have a Democratic president like that, there's no fear of Trump 2.0, somebody who may be like a Tom Cotton, who may be just as evil as Trump is, but a little more cunning in his ability to actually get his agenda through. So this is why you need to support somebody who will actually transform the country for good. But let's get to Mr. Corbyn here. It's a lot. Actually, I think I got 3 videos on Corbyn. I'm just going to close some tabs. That one, and that one. All right, don't worry. I'll get to this. So there's an upcoming general election in the UK. So I thought it's a good time to share some of Jeremy Corbyn. I came across a few clips here that I want to share with you. So this first one essentially is 30 years of Jeremy Corbyn. Let me go down here. And it really shows you his commitment to the people.
The Labour Party belongs to its grassroots.
I think there's definitely a plan to try to diminish or exclude the left within the party. That isn't going to work because the left and the party often represent an awful lot of what popular opinion is about. The need to raise taxation for the above average income people in order to pay for the needs of the rest. And I see a moral justification for that. I think it's the right thing to do.
I'm horrified that there should be any idea of cutting disability and sick benefits. They're not sufficient as it is. Many people live in great poverty because of the inadequate levels of benefits.
It was founded as a party dedicated to the provision of universal benefits, universal housing and universal education. I believe the case for public ownership is absolutely overwhelming. I think it's wrong for the party to set as a benchmark competition and market forces as being something to look up to.
No more detentions of any of these asylum seekers. They're not criminals, they're people that are fleeing from crime.
Does she not agree that people sleeping on the streets of our capital city, being charged exorbitant rents, and children being brought up in bed and breakfast hotels is a disgrace?
Mr. Speaker, I announce very considerable extra expenditure to relieve homelessness.
Public representatives demand the highest possible standards of public probity.
£25 billion plus £50 billion running costs is an extraordinary waste of money for a weapon that can only cause death and mayhem if ever used against the civilian population. It is not bring us peace and not bring us security. Ordinary people all over this country can show their disgust at the military policies being pursued by George Bush and very unfortunately supported actively by the British government.
Whilst obviously condemning the bombing campaigns in Britain, it is important to be able to talk to Sinn Féin as a way of demonstrating to Sinn Féin and its supporters that there is some point in dialogue. If you believe something, you should say it. If you don't believe it, you shouldn't say it. I think there are principles involved here. If I stand for election as a Labour candidate, as a socialist, people know what they're voting for.
And understand that this last point here is a big deal. Corbyn defied the Labour whip more than 600 times. That means he didn't vote with his party more than 600 times. Now, in Canada, this is almost, I feel like this is unheard of. Usually parties vote together. They support the same stuff. Jeremy Corbyn stands up for what he believes in. Much like, I get very similar vibes off this clip as I do with old Bernie clips, because it shows you this man has a history of being dedicated to the people, of fighting for what he actually believes in. He doesn't sell out to special interests. So when you have a Labour Party leader like this in Jeremy Corbyn, I mean, the kind of positive change that can happen in the UK, someone who's going to reinvest back into people, reinvest into the NHS, reinvest into homelessness or into housing, and into food security. You have the potential here for a dramatic shift in a similar way that Bernie Sanders could deliver in the US. I hope people are more aware of this now than they were during the last election, even though Labour had a fantastic result in the last election. It clearly wasn't enough to form government. I hope this time they can actually form government. And I just don't. How does anybody vote for the Tories? How does anybody vote for Boris Johnson? This complete buffoon, just the British version of Trump. It doesn't make any sense to me. As long as people come out in big numbers, this is what matters. If non-voters, typical non-voters, come out to vote in these elections, be it in the UK or be it in America, then the progressive candidates will win because the majority of people agree with them on the issues. But you have to you have to go out and vote. And you have to bring a friend with you. Bring someone with you who doesn't normally vote, who isn't into politics, but agrees with you on these issues. Bring them out with you to vote. This is how you change things. You have to engage, especially if you're someone who knows this stuff. If you're somebody watching my channel, this means you're more informed than the average person is. So you have to engage other people in your life, friends, family, Get them in, if you're in the UK, get them into this race. If you're in America, get them into the primary. Help them understand what is going on, who is fighting for you. Show them the issue. Show them old clips of Corbyn. Show them old clips of Bernie. You have to engage people who are not normally engaged in politics. Get them engaged in the process and get them out to vote. This is how you change things. But I'm not done. There's more. So actually, Luke Savage, who's a great follow on Twitter. Make sure you follow Luke Savage. He's a writer for Jacobin. He put out this clip as well. So this is Jeremy Corbyn speaking on the Iraq War. Yeah, that's it. Let's watch this.
To every single thank you to every single person that's here today in the biggest ever political demonstration in the history of this country. And today there are 600 and more demonstrations in cities all around the world. Every country, every continent, everybody in the world has a chance today to say no, absolutely no, to war on Iraq. Well, surely the message today in London, in Glasgow, and ordinary people on the streets of this country is this. Why are we spending £3.5 billion on a war that nobody wants, when there is an AIDS pandemic sweeping Africa, when a quarter of the world's children die in poverty and starvation, and we say there isn't money sufficient for our own public services? Thousands more deaths in Iraq will not make things right. It will set off a spiral of conflict, of hate, of misery, of desperation that will fuel the wars, the conflict, the terrorism, the depression and the misery of future generations. Our message today here in London, 1 million and more strong, is this. We want to live in a world free from war. The way to free us from the scourge of war is to free ourselves from the scourge of injustice, of poverty, and the misery that's associated with that. This movement is giving that message to the British government. Stop now or pay a political price. Thank you very much.
Like, when you have somebody with this consistency, being correct on the issues, fighting for people his entire career, how is there even a discussion? Like, it should just be human nature, or it should be obvious to support politicians, support candidates that were right, that were correct on the issues against all the power that was against them. So you think back when the Iraq War was going on, and you have very few politicians speaking out loudly about it, coming out against it. People like Bernie Sanders leading the effort against the Iraq War. Jeremy Corbyn leading the effort against the Iraq War. These are clear leaders. People that were correct on the issues, despite everybody being against them, despite the odds against them, correct on the issues, speaking loudly, getting people out and engaged on these issues. We look back in history and see them now. It's clear these are people that should be leading countries. There is not even a discussion anymore. This all should be obvious. Now, let me get to one more clip here, because it appears it's maybe becoming a little obvious for some people, as Labour is now doing fairly well in fundraising. So let's watch this.
I want to tell you that this afternoon we passed a very important landmark, a milestone. We have raised from public donations for our election campaign to take the fight to every town, every city, every village all over this country, £1 million. And to raise this money, when we agreed to the election last week, Tuesday, I didn't jump in a taxi and go down to the City of London to see some hedge fund managers. I was going to call all my billionaire friends until I realized I didn't have any. And so we sent out an appeal, and our supporters, our members, have been very generous. And you know what the average donation is? £26. And I'm more proud of £26 being donated to our campaign by people who believe in what we believe in than somebody giving money because they've got large amounts of money in order to try and buy influence into our political system.
There you go. How do you argue against that? I mean, there are so many obvious parallels between Corbyn and Sanders. I mean, raising small dollar donations, not meeting with wealthy donors, being correct on the issues for 30, 40 years, fighting publicly against some of the things out there that was happening back then, like the Iraq War. I mean, yeah. Let's just imagine a world, an incredible world in the future where Jeremy Corbyn is the leader of the UK, Bernie Sanders is the president in the US, and we begin to see a dramatic shift in how politics is done worldwide. It requires events like that. It requires a dramatic shift in two major superpowers in the world, the UK and the US. It requires them to change leadership and change how politics is done to affect the rest of the world. We are on the precipice of that. So this is why I talk about, if you understand, if you're engaged on these issues, if you know what is going on generally, again, no one's an expert on anything, but you clearly, if you're watching me, you know more than most people. You have to engage the masses, engage people in your life, tweet about it, post things on Facebook about it, but engage friends and family, get people actively involved in what is going on, and at the very least, get them out to vote. When it's time to vote, bring people with you. This is how you change things. Okay. It's going to be hard to match up to what we just saw there. But I'm going to try with the rest of the show. So let me get some more super chats before I move on. Maybe I'll do this more. I'll try to engage super chats throughout the show as opposed to just waiting for them at the end. By the way, I'm going sort of in order, so if you're just sending them in now, I won't get to yours till later. So the earlier you get them in, the better. Excuse me. All right, where was I? Balthazar says, technically, Hillary Clinton is correct. Warren's plan will never get enacted because she won't get elected. Bernie's might, Jayapal might, Warren's won't. Fair point. I don't think that's what Elizabeth Warren meant, but fair point. PJ Coin says, deport Hillary. Hey, that's a Euro donation, so maybe she'll be deported to Europe. Aaron Pimentel says people were worried about California moving its primary up, but Kamala has fallen off. Bernie can win California. He's got 46% in 2016, or he got 46% in 2016. How huge will Super Tuesday be? Yeah, it will be huge. And man, California's up for grabs. It's so hard to look in the future and see where the race is going to be then. But I got a good feeling for Bernie Sanders because he has the on-the-ground support, the organizing that you need to win these races. David Apoyan says, "Can I buy you a fish sandwich?" Sure, I eat fish. I like fish. If you don't mean that in a negative way, in a derogatory way, whatever that could mean otherwise. But if you mean an actual fish sandwich, I'm down. Great Random Gamer sends a super chat in saying, you were briefly featured by another leftist streamer, by the way, Vosh. I've heard of Vosh. I don't know who they are, though. But he's like a Twitch guy, right? But interesting. I'm curious what that person said. Okay, I'll get back to super chats later. Let's get to some more stories here. This coffee has me a little wired. You know, when I talk over my words and I get too ahead of myself, I've likely had a coffee. But at the same time, if I didn't have a coffee, I might be a little dead right now. So I need to have that coffee. Okay, what do we got here? I was just looking at the chat. Yuri Johnson says, fish equals something dirty. All caps. Okay, well, I don't want to speculate, but I like fish, real fish. I'm half Portuguese, so I have to like fish. It's in my genes. What do we got coming up? Wall Street Journal. This is sort of a small story, but just making sure I hit everything else before I get to this. Yes, okay. Yeah, this is I'm not sure how much I'll actually say about this. You'll see. But it's funny nonetheless, as you're going to see. So as the popularity of Medicare for All continues to rise, people are reaching at straws. The people that are against Medicare for All, the health industry, people that benefit from the current system that are against Medicare for All are trying to devise new ways to attack it. This, from the Wall Street Journal, though, is really something special. Check this out. Wall Street Journal. Elizabeth Warren's Medicare for All plan risks unintended consequences such as overuse of healthcare. Overuse of healthcare. You use healthcare so much that you actually become unhealthy and you destroy the system. This doesn't exist. Okay? The other countries that have universal systems operate just fine. All of those systems are much better than what the American system currently is. Currently, in the American system, there is underuse of healthcare. Are they going to talk about that? Because the high cost of healthcare, there are actually people that should be getting healthcare that aren't getting it because they can't afford it, or people that go bankrupt because of the current healthcare system. Is that a focus here? No. But overuse, you might get too healthy. You got to watch out for this single payer system. It is so absurd. I live in Canada, single payer system. There's not overuse of healthcare. Now, you could argue, well, should we have more funding into healthcare? Should we also have things like dental care guaranteed to us? Absolutely. But compared to the American system, the issues that we have in this single payer system is nothing compared to what Americans deal with. Again, Americans, 45,000 people a year on average die due to a lack of access to healthcare. 500,000 people a year go bankrupt in America largely due to medical costs. We have neither of these things. Medical bankruptcy in Canada doesn't exist. Not a thing. But the worry here, overuse of healthcare. Can't have Medicare for all because you're going to use too much of it. I just don't even know. Do people buy this? They're really trying hard at this point. I don't even know. Clearly, headlines like this and stories like this are written by people that are fine under the current system because they already have money. They're already wealthy. So I've never argued that the American system sucks for wealthy people. No, it's great. If you have the money, if you're incredibly wealthy and cost doesn't matter to you, the American healthcare system works perfectly great. But if you are the vast majority of people who either can't afford it or have their healthcare tied to their employer, meaning that even if they want to leave their job, maybe they feel stuck to it because they have healthcare through their employer, whatever, a number of issues. If you are the majority of people, the current healthcare system, this for-profit healthcare system in America does not work for you because it is insane. When you take out the profit-making middleman, you fix a lot because you now have a system that is actually designed to help people. So you also hear the arguments about rationing. Oh, there's rationing in universal systems. You got to ration healthcare because of overuse. You got to ration healthcare. There's also rationing in the American system, but it's rationing based on wealth. If you're incredibly wealthy, you get all the healthcare. Whereas in universal systems, the rationing is based on need. Who needs this surgery? If you have a life or death surgery that you need, you get it immediately. Isn't that what healthcare should be based on? Whether you actually need the healthcare or not. So this idea that, a system designed for the wealthy is much better than a system that is actually designed for the vast majority of people. How do you even make that argument? Honestly, there is no way to make an argument for the current American system over a single payer system unless you are lying to people or just straight up saying, hey, I'm a greedy wealthy dude. I don't care if you die because you can't afford healthcare because it works for me. If that's your argument, okay, fine. At least you're being honest about it. But that's the only argument you could actually make for the current system. Because if you're the vast majority of people, the current for-profit system in America is crazy. I mean, every time I talk about healthcare, I feel like I bring something else up that I didn't bring up before, because there are so many benefits to a single-payer system that it's hard to really understand it all. But I always come back to saying that I never think about healthcare unless I need it. That is really one of the biggest selling features. Healthcare, once you have it guaranteed to you through a single-payer system, you don't think about it until you need it, because why would you have to think about it? There's no need to think about it. So it frees up a lot of your time. The amount of time that people spend on, health insurance companies or trying to get things covered, whatever the hell it is, out-of-pocket expenses. Hey, how am I going to afford this? I have to work more. All of that is just eliminated under a single-payer system. And there's something else I was going to mention now I'm forgetting. But it's on the tip of my tongue. Okay, I forget now. But there is just, I don't even know. I mean, if you have questions about single-payer or about healthcare, let me know in the super chat. I'll try to answer them. Again, I'm no healthcare expert. I'm just somebody who lives in the country, lives in Canada under a single payer system, and knows how this system works. Anybody trying to argue against Medicare for all is crazy. Oh, I was going to mention another benefit of a Medicare for all system is it puts everybody in the country on the same plan. Now, that isn't a benefit simply because it lowers costs, but also because it means your Congress people and the wealthiest people in the country are also on the Medicare for all system. Meaning, if they try to destroy it, try to defund it, whatever they try to do, it's going to affect everybody. So there's less of a chance of that being destroyed when everybody has it. On top of that, just in terms of polling the American people, when you have universal programs like Social Security that everybody pays into, these programs are incredibly popular because everybody pays into it. It's a universal thing. It's not means tested. When you have these means tested programs, what you end up doing is you divide the country, because some people say, oh, we should get rid of this because I don't need it, so we should get completely rid of it. But when you have a Medicare for all system that everybody is on and you're all paying into it, and the wealthiest people and your Congress people are on that same healthcare plan, it now strengthens that healthcare. It strengthens that system. There's less of a chance of it being brought down in some way, because everybody needs that healthcare system. Everybody uses the same healthcare system. There is no more wealthy people, creating their own lane in healthcare. You're all guaranteed under the same system. So your Congress people are going to have to, if they want to somehow get rid of Medicare for all once it's implemented, it's going to actually affect them personally. So there's less of a chance of that happening. All right. What's next? I'm going to be talking about healthcare or about Medicare for all till I'm blue in the face. Until Americans have it. I've discussed this before, but there was a time in my life where I considered moving to the U.S. And a big reason why I didn't think about that seriously, think about that move and really go for it, was because of healthcare. I didn't want to think about healthcare if I was moving to the U.S. And I don't even know how you do it, honestly. It's such a thing that when you're born into a life that you have healthcare guaranteed to you, it's so weird to think of living in a country where you have to think about out-of-pocket expenses or think about your healthcare being tied to an employer. It's just it's a really hard thing to get your mind around, because it doesn't make any sense, and it really holds you down as a person. I mean, you talk about freedom. There's no freedom under a for-profit healthcare system. The freedom is under a Medicare for all system. That's where actual freedom is. It frees your actual life up to live your life and not think about healthcare. Again, another point that I don't normally make, but they just come up and into my brain when I talk about healthcare, because there are so many benefits to a single-payer system. All right, where should I go next? Nancy Pelosi. So Nancy Pelosi, and then Sanders surging, and then there's a lot I want to get to. Scott Walker, then Netflix CEO. Okay, and then I'll take super chats. And actually, maybe have I taken any in this break? I don't think I have. Let me take some. PJ Coin. I don't think I read this one. Nope. It's a new PJ Coin super chat. Thank you, PJ Coin. Says, what was the name of the Canadian man who was voted the greatest Canadian? He implemented Canada's healthcare system. Tommy Douglas. Tommy Douglas is that man. Voted the greatest Canadian of all time in the early 2000s by Canada. Was the man who brought us universal healthcare, and also brought us the NDP as well. Balthazar says, what about Singh as PM of Canada with Corbyn and Bernie? Yeah, that'd be good. Though, look, I like Singh. I don't think Singh is a Bernie or a Corbyn. He's just not. Singh, I would think of more as like an Elizabeth Warren. But with that said, it would be a huge improvement over Justin Trudeau. So that would be great. But we're nowhere, since we just had an election, we're nowhere near that potentially happening. And Canada isn't really the superpower that I would say the UK and the US are, just on a global scale. So I think Jeremy Corbyn and Bernie would have more of an impact globally than Singh would as Canada's leader. Thank you, Balthazar, for all your super chats. Henry Volt says, overuse of healthcare. What's that? What's that even to mean? Yeah. So their argument. Let me just bring it back up for a second. So their argument essentially is because you have everybody now have access to healthcare, then they're going to use too much of it. There's going to be not enough doctors, not enough hospitals to deal with people actually using healthcare, which. There's a potential, first of all, not overuse. It's people that need healthcare using it. But yeah, there's a potential initially for there to be an uptick of people using healthcare because now they can actually afford to go there or to go get healthcare because they couldn't afford to before. But that's actually built into the Medicare for All bill. So there is a transition. I forget exactly how they implement it, but there's a transition where they acknowledge that, yes, once Medicare for All is available, there will be more people using it, and we're accounting for that. So it's already built into the plan, but there is no worry of again, overuse of healthcare can't be a thing because people need healthcare. You get it when you need it. Now, some hypochondriacs go to the doctor too often, I guess, but it's going to be the same percentage in the US as it is in Canada or the UK or other countries. So yeah, that's accounted for in the system, but it's a tiny fraction of people. Largely, there's a massive benefit to the population because people can actually go and see a doctor now. They can actually afford to get procedures they need done that they couldn't afford to before under a universal system. But good question. Thank you for that, Henry Volt. Right, Balthazar, one more before I go to the next story. Big super chat, $19. Thank you. Or I should say $20. It's so ridiculous that they are shitting themselves over Warren's plan when hers is a bad compromise between Bernie's and the ACA. Jayapal is even further left. Even for the rich, for-profit healthcare produces bad outcomes. Yeah. So Warren, I wouldn't say Warren's plan is a compromise between Medicare for All and the ACA. Warren's plan is actually Medicare for All, but the way she funds it is, from what I've read from an expert that went into it, Matt Brunegg, he called it bad and unworkable. Let me just bring up his piece. I'm not going to read the thing, but there's a great breakdown from Matt Brunegg on this. Okay, so he has it in Jacobin too. So he initially put it to his own blog. I forget what he calls his blog, but it appears to also be in Jacobin, which I'll show you in a second. So I assume this is the same article I read on his site. But yeah, so he calls Elizabeth Warren's financing plan for Medicare for All an unworkable mess. Let me see if I can give you a brief summary here. The main purpose of the proposal appears to be to find a plan that you can message as not increasing middle-class taxes, which is, of course, a nonsensical goal insofar as Warren herself has said. What matters is middle-class healthcare costs, not whether you categorize those as costs. So basically, Elizabeth Warren has given into the mainstream conservative talking point that, oh, but you're going to raise taxes, right? Which, yeah, you're raising taxes, but you're taking away healthcare premiums. You're taking away out-of-pocket expenses. So that's the argument that Bernie makes. Yeah, taxes go up because there's 300 million people in the country. You got to pay for healthcare for these people. So yeah, their taxes go up. But now they're not paying any money to a private insurance company. You take out the profit-making middleman, which also means the cost of healthcare goes down. There is no one now making millions of dollars off of healthcare. You take out that profit-making middleman, the cost of healthcare comes down. Even a libertarian study, the Mercatus Center, looked into this and couldn't get around the numbers. Their own study, a libertarian think tank study, showed the cost of Medicare for All would bring the cost of healthcare down over 10 years. I believe it's around $2 trillion. $2 trillion cheaper under a Medicare for All system than the current system over 10 years. So, like, there is, first of all, way too much discussion and focus on how to fund Medicare for All. We never have these discussions about anything else unless you're helping people. If it's about, education or healthcare, well, how are you going to pay for that? But if it's about war or tax cuts for the rich, just doesn't matter. How are you going to pay for it? No one asked that question. I mean, it's absurd that the only time how you pay for it comes up when it's about helping people. This is why I don't even like engaging in this discussion. I didn't do a video on Warren's plan here on Warren's cost plan here because I don't think it should be a topic. I don't care. Push for it, get it passed. It'll be funded, especially because if you understand MMT, then you understand you don't need taxes to pay for things. It doesn't work like that. Like, the government does not work like a business. I mean, look at Trump now. The tax cuts for the rich, the conservatives, Republicans, so obsessed with deficit. Oh, all this spending. How can you have all this spending? Look at the deficit. Trump makes it worse. Have you heard conservatives, Fox News, talk anything about this? Have they discussed how they're spending way too much? How since they cut taxes for the rich, that the deficit has increased, everything's gotten worse? No, because they only talk about it when it's a Democratic president. They only talk about it when Democrats are in power. The last Republican to balance the budget, I believe, is Eisenhower. Let me look that up. But it definitely wasn't Reagan. It definitely wasn't George Bush. I don't know. I'll waste too much time looking this up. But I think I'm almost positive that's a fact. Yeah, so Eisenhower balanced the budget. And that appears to be the last time that happened. So you don't need balanced budgets. Like, this whole discussion about paying for crap with taxes is not based in reality. All right. But that was the story. If you want to look at it, look up Jacobin, look up Matt Brunig. You'll see his piece. Back to my stories. All right, what's up next? Nancy Pelosi. So I was going to do this last week because I think this came out late last week. Or these videos popped up late last week, but I never got around to it. So House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is not a fan of Medicare for All. She keeps talking about how, oh, Medicare for all goes too far. We can't get Medicare for all done. Let me show you a recent example of what she has said about Medicare for all, and then let me show you a video from the early 90s about what she was saying about a single-payer healthcare system. So first, this clip.
I'm not a big fan of Medicare for all. I mean, I welcome the debate. I think that we should have health care for all. I think that the Affordable Care Benefit is better than the Medicare benefit, but we have invited advocates for it to testify in Congress, in the Ways and Means Committee, in the Budget Committee, in the Rules Committee, being respectful of the point of view. But it is expensive. Who pays is very important. What are the benefits that come in there? So I would think that hopefully, as we emerge into the election year, the mantra will be more health care for all Americans, because there is a comfort level that some people have with their current private insurance that they have. And if that is to be phased out, let's talk about it, but let's not just have one bill that would do that.
Medicare for all covers more than what most people currently have through their private insurance. It guarantees you health care, free at the point of use, no out-of-pocket expenses. It gives you the freedom of maybe changing jobs, leaving your job, going somewhere else, starting a new job, going back to school, or starting a business, not having to give those people health care because they have health care guaranteed to them. Endless benefits to a single-payer system. There is no reason to want to keep your private insurance. Private insurance is a for-profit middleman. All it does is cost you more money for healthcare than what would cost under a single-payer system where you take out that for-profit middleman. But here's what Nancy Pelosi said back in '93 about single-payer, because interestingly enough, it's much different.
Congressman McDermott, for holding this press conference and for your leadership on the single-payer proposal. I remain a staunch and ardent supporter of the McDermott-Conyers bill. I am very pleased with the President's presentation last night. I'm sure others this morning have told you that he made an excellent diagnosis of the problem, and now we have to get on with how we take care of providing health care to all Americans. My problem with the President's proposal, if there is a problem, is that one of the principles of universal access, one of the principles of the single-payer bill is universal access. The President has accepted some of the principles of the McDermott legislation, be it universal access, no precondition, portability, you know, the list goes on and on. But for access to be universal, it must be affordable. And my concern is that at 150% of poverty, a family would have to start paying for its 20% share of the insurance, may not make it affordable to many of the families whose needs it hopes to address. There is already a concession on the part of the federal government that a family needs food stamps if they're at 185% of the poverty level. If we admit that people cannot feed their families at below 185% of poverty, how then can we expect them to pay for access to insurance at 150% of poverty? I think the President is on the right track. I think the closer he moves toward the single payer, the better. As I've said before, I hope that this plan, and when I say hope, I mean that I will join with my colleagues here in working to see that the plan that the Congress passes contains as many of the provisions of single payer as possible, that it does not foreclose on an eventual single payer, and that it does not throw up obstacles to states easily establishing their own single payer. Once again, I want to commend Mr. McDermott and Mr. Conyers for their leadership on this. Thank you.
Unbelievable. It's like a different person. Nancy Pelosi back then supported single payer, now says it goes too far, thinks that we should be talking about health care for all. It's all about health care for all. But how do you get that health care for all? Through a Medicare for all system. I've talked, or during this stream already, I've talked like a million minutes about healthcare. I don't know what else there is left to say. Every other country has moved to a universal system. Many of those countries, single payer systems. I live under a single payer system in Canada. There's absolutely no reason not to move to a single payer system. The current for-profit system is absurd. Me as a Canadian, I never think about healthcare until I need it. To me, that's the biggest selling feature. When you need healthcare, you get it. It's free at the point of use. No out-of-pocket expenses. You never think about healthcare ever until you need it, and then you get it. Just the disingenuousness of these. Like, Nancy Pelosi must know she's full of shit, right? Like, it's impossible for her to go out there and not realize, or not at least somewhat recall the fight she was having back in the 90s and just completely push all that aside to defend insurance companies now. And that's really what it's about. I mean, it has to be about that. They get money from the healthcare industry and they don't want to hurt that relationship because there's no other way to defend that. All right. Gonna reset myself while I look at the next story. Here we go. I haven't talked enough about Bernie Sanders today. I know. So I will. I got a couple of Bernie stories here. And then super chats. It is going to be a longer stream today, probably till 5 p.m. Eastern. Because there's a lot here. In fact, there's so much. I'm afraid I'm going to miss some of the. There's a lot of data supporting right now that Bernie is surging. And I'm not even addressing all of it in this video. But I'll address what I can here. Okay. Wait. Sorry, if you wonder what's happening, I got to trying to get an ad off my screen. There we go. And prep this story. All right. So, based on all available data right now, it appears Bernie Sanders is surging. So, I have some stories to share here, some polls to share. Let's get to this first one right here from Newsweek. Check out this headline. And that's kind of the expression we should all have. Bernie Sanders best on healthcare, the economy, environment, and immigration in new 2020 poll. So this is exactly what it sounds like. Conducted by Ipsos on behalf of Reuters between the 1st and the 4th, the poll asks respondents to select the candidate from the list below you think is best on that particular issue, with Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Beto O'Rourke, and Cory Booker available as selections. Among independents and self-identified Democrats, Bernie Sanders was the preferred candidate in every policy category, which included immigration, healthcare, the environment, and the economy and jobs. Let me go through some of the numbers here. So this is based on that poll. Wait, that isn't the poll. Great, now I got to pull it up. That isn't it either. Okay. Let me find the numbers, because the numbers are actually, I could just read it off of Newsweek, but the numbers are impressive, because it isn't just like Bernie's above by a few points. He's above them on a lot, or by big numbers. So 16% of respondents agreed Bernie Sanders was the best on immigration issues, followed by Joe Biden with 13% and Elizabeth Warren with 10%. The same ranking of the top three candidates was similar when it came to the economy and jobs, but wider divisions between candidates' preference were evident in other policy areas. Sanders was the clear preference when it came to health care at 24%, a reflection of the central role of a single payer Medicare for all plan that has played in his campaign, with Warren at 15 and Biden at 14. Again, let's just focus on this. Bernie, 24%, way ahead of Warren and Biden, almost 10 above Warren, almost 10 above Warren and 10 above Biden. Sanders was also substantially ahead when it came to environmental issues, such as the Green New Deal, polling at 20 percentage points to Biden's 12 and Warren's 11. So you have, look, I don't put a lot of stock in most polls, to be quite honest with you. Even in this one, I don't put too much in it because I think Bernie's actually much higher in these numbers. And that's because most polling looks at registered voters, looks at existing Democratic voters, and largely leans older in generations. A lot of young people don't answer their phone. A lot of young people, when you look into the data on these polls, are not polled in this data. So when you have Bernie's support, which I'm also going to get to in a minute here, being massive among the youth, that is really going to impact this race, especially with the generation that wasn't able to vote in the last election in 2016, but can vote now. And when we're looking at, which we're going to look at here, the increase in young voters coming out, and we apply that potentially to the primary in 2020, it's going to be a massive difference here. So check this out. This will have an impact on the election if these young voters come out. 18 to 29-year-olds turnout plus 300%. So this is early voting turnout in Virginia 2019 versus 2015. Young voters, the most here, 300%, up 300%. That is unprecedented. I mean, if you have followed politics for, over 10 years or more, young people don't come out to vote generally. These new generations are different. Millennials now are coming out to vote more, and Gen Z especially, incredibly engaged in politics. So this is only increasing. The younger generations are way more engaged, and that will have an impact that you're not seeing in polling right now, as a lot of polls don't poll younger generations, or as much, I should say, as existing voters. So let's look at some other data here. This one. So this is a national poll from Monmouth. So this may not look like much. Biden 23, Warren 23, Sanders 20. But if you dig into the numbers, you see that indeed Bernie Sanders jumped 5 points in this poll while Biden and Warren both dropped. So Biden dropped from 25 to 23. Warren dropped from 28 to 23. Bernie, 15 to 20. So again, showing a surge for Sanders. And here's another data point to show that young support is being boosted. New Monmouth poll that I just showed you shows Bernie surging and Warren slipping with voters, and especially voters under 50. So voters under 50, Sanders is a +8. So that same poll I just showed you, Sanders +5. Under 50 voters, he's a +8. Again, showing you where the momentum is and showing you that young voters are more engaged this time. Let me also show this other breakdown of some recent polls from David Sirota, who is one of Bernie's speechwriters. So polls in the last 10 days, national polls, NBC, Wall Street Journal, Bernie +5, Monmouth, Bernie +5, Fox, Bernie +2, Iowa, Quinnipiac, Bernie in tie for first, New York Times, Siena, Bernie in tie for first, New Hampshire, CNN poll, Bernie in first, early states, Morning Consult, Bernie is a +4. The Bernie Sanders campaign is surging right now, and this is not a headline you're going to hear if you tune into Chuck Todd, especially Chuck Todd. He's not going to talk about this. But wait, there's more. Yes, you thought I was done. I'm not done. As Emma Vigeland tweeted out here, of the dozen Democratic candidates on October's debate stage, Bernie Sanders has raised the most money from women since he announced his presidential campaign with at least 17.1 million, about 40% of his funds coming from women. So let me go a little deeper here. Oh, wait, that's another piece. Let me actually click on this link because I saw the graph here. So you can see with women here, he is doing better than everybody else. So you got Bernie here. So the dark bars are from women, and then male is from men, the lighter bar. Look at that. Higher than anybody else in the race, including Donald Trump. So Donald Trump only beats Bernie barely with men. This is over. So this is 2019. So the whole year. So Trump leads everybody with donations from men. Bernie leads all Democratic candidates with men and women. But there's more. One more thing I want to share. This is Bernie's electability. So I saw this piece yesterday, and this is a great story. Leftism isn't very appealing to non-voters, but Bernie Sanders is. Now, this is something I speak about often. People attach labels or attach different values to different labels. So what might mean liberal or conservative or moderate to you is not what liberal, conservative, and moderate means to other people. Case in point, I just opened the wrong program. Case in point, this right here. So there's a piece here I want to read. There we go. Here we go. A majority of, see if I can zoom in. A majority of undecided non-college educated voters in the Times poll expressed a preference for moderate Democrats over liberal ones. Now you would think, okay, non-voters want a moderate. They want a moderate. That means they want Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg. That's who they want. Well, keep reading. But also for single-payer health care and a fundamental systemic change to American society. So American non-voters want a moderate Democrat, but also single-payer health care and a fundamental systemic change to American society over a return to politics as normal. Non-voting Democrats espouse the same idiosyncratic preferences. Notably, undecided college-educated voters in the Times survey were hostile towards single-payer health care and more disposed towards a return to normalcy than fundamental change. But only 35% of undecided voters in the poll were college-educated. Taken together, the Times findings suggest that unreconstructed Sanderism, which is to say a bold anti-establishment message focused narrowly on healthcare and inequality, might be the party's best bet for reaching non-voting Democrats and swing voters alike. That's the Bernie Sanders message. Anti-establishment, focused on healthcare, focused on inequality. This is how you win. So remove yourself from dumb labels like moderate or conservative, or I should say remove yourself from the reporting on those labels where MSNBC will report, well, most Americans poll themselves as moderate, so clearly they want Joe Biden or Pete Buttigieg. No, because obviously people attach different values to different words. So as you see here, moderate non-voters want single-payer health care and a fundamental change to American society. They want Bernie Sanders. This is how you win. That's it. That's all my data for that story. I got more stories, but I'm sure there are even more polls that I missed. I'm sure there are people that can share links or share, I'm not sure you can share links on YouTube chat, but you can share information in the chat that supports this. There is so much of it. Right now, the momentum appears to be in the Sanders direction. Again, I don't always love polling, but it is important. It is a factor in these discussions, and it appears to show that Sanders is gaining support. Let me get to some super chats before I get to the next story. JMac, $10. Thank you, JMac. Says, what do you think of Kyle Kalinski's direct democracy ballot vote? You're pretty hot, by the way. Thank you, JMac. What do I think of direct democracy? I like his idea. I think the only issue you run into is the issue with all ballot initiatives is there's going to be misinformation put out there. So say you have 3 things on the ballot. First of all, it shouldn't be more than 5 because if you start putting too much on there, it begins to get too confusing. It's too hard to message it. At most 5, I would say 3 ballot initiatives. But fine, you have nationally, you have 3 things on the ballot in a presidential election. You just have to watch out for all the money that will be spent against those things that you want. So say legalizing marijuana is one of the items. There's going to be a lot of spending from, the alcohol industry, the tobacco industry to try and push people away from supporting that. Or Medicare for all is on the ballot. The health industry is going to spend a lot to push back against. Now, they're doing that now anyways, but I just fear the idea that if something that should get passed loses in a ballot vote, that it won't be revisited. And I don't think that should be the case. So I think it's important that there are these ongoing discussions about issues like Medicare for all and that it's not put on a ballot prematurely where it's going to lose. So there is a lot of delicate balancing around something like that. Well, so I support it in theory. It's just a matter of how exactly it's enacted or how it's enacted. And you need to make sure you have the money and the grassroots support on the ground to pass something you want done. Because a lot of people are just not informed on the issues. So you're going to get people who are swayed by a commercial they saw that was anti something that they would actually support if they were better informed on what that ballot initiative or ballot vote is about. So there you go. Jack Brown says, in the U.S., insurance companies control healthcare. If you need expensive medication, it's common practice to have to try cheaper alternatives first. Yeah. Cheaper alternatives in terms of medication? Because we have, here's another thing. I mean, I think Warren's discussed this. I'm not sure if Sanders has discussed this. But basically having, no-name pharmaceutical drugs. There's no reason why the government just can't produce its own drugs. And at cheaper cost than what these companies sell them for. So cheaper alternatives doesn't necessarily mean that it's worse. It could simply mean off-brand. So in Canada, we have generic drugs that are off-brand, but they're cheaper and they're the exact same thing. So it's all a matter of what you're talking about exactly and how it's done. But there's no reason why pharmaceuticals shouldn't be a lot cheaper than they currently are. Jer says, Ratnat, keep doing everything you're doing. Keep positive and keep marching. If we don't let the smears and blackout burn us out, we burn them out with the BERN. Yeah, totally. Thank you, Jer. I assume that's short for Jeremy. But yeah, I try to be a little more positive than I think a lot of people are that do this work. And that isn't to say that there isn't a reason to be angry and negative. There absolutely is. But what motivates me is positivity. What motivates me is thinking about the good things that can happen in the future if we work together and try to get them done. I don't get motivated by negativity. I don't get motivated by negative stories. I don't get motivated by anger. I get motivated by seeing people do good work and seeing ideas put out there that are positive and seeing the Bernie Sanders grassroots movement continue to grow. That's what motivates me. So keep that in mind as well. People are motivated by different things. Some people are motivated by negativity. That gets them engaged. Seeing Hillary Clinton out there talking about a wealth tax and how she hates it. Maybe that'll engage some people to get more involved. But I prefer to look at these news stories in a more positive light and try to focus on things that generally would excite me. So if I feel excited by something, then I assume other people also feel excited by that same thing. So, and with that said, it is also important to sometimes do the Hillary Clinton clips and just remind people of how out of touch these people still are. People like Hillary Clinton, people in these elite circles, because that really does show you what we're up against. It shows you where the power still is and who we have to face to take the power away. But like the point of me even showing that Hillary Clinton clip earlier, which could be construed as like a negative story, is that it shows you that even though Elizabeth Warren withheld her endorsement in 2016, she got nothing out of it. She withheld her endorsement from Bernie in 2016, ended up endorsing Hillary Clinton, and now Hillary Clinton turns around and then hits Elizabeth Warren on her Medicare for All plan. Nothing positive at all came from Elizabeth Warren holding out during that race. In fact, her support right now would be massive, would be, I think, a lot larger than it currently is, if there was a clear, or if it was obvious to people that these are two candidates on the exact same side of issues. That, oh, Elizabeth Warren back in 2016, she stuck her neck out for Bernie Sanders, and I'm going to show her that I support her now. We would see a lot more of that. But I think that was kind of the beginning of the unraveling for her support, for her strong support from the left, because it showed that when she's under the pressure to actually fight for what she believes in, that she will collapse and give in. That, to me, I think is one of the biggest tellers. And it's not something that, look, I understand the calculus that was going on in her mind at the time. I think Warren thought, well, Hillary's going to win anyways, so it's important for Hillary to have this progressive voice in her ear, even though there's zero chance that Hillary would have actually listened to Elizabeth Warren. But you could see from her perspective, hey, if we actually want to get something positive done during a Hillary Clinton presidency, I'm going to play nice right now with Hillary Clinton. But it doesn't work like that. The wealthy, the powerful don't give an F about you. They will sell you out immediately if it means protecting their own wealth and their own power. So never try and compromise with people in those positions of power, because they don't care. They don't care about you. Polly Fufu, who I've seen quite often, hi Polly, says, thanks for being here. I appreciate your work. Thank you, Polly. I appreciate you. I was going to say your work, but I appreciate you. Or maybe you do good work too. I don't know. Henry Volt sends a super chat saying Medicare is healthcare. Everyone getting Medicare would mean everyone gets healthcare. This is stupid. Why are we going around and around about this? We're going around and around about this because a lot of powerful people don't want to see Medicare for All passed. That's the only reason. And if you notice, I mean, the mainstream press never actually absorbs any information. They'll occasionally have people on like AOC who will discuss Medicare for All and why it's an obvious move in the right direction. And then the next segment, why Medicare for All is too far left. Like, they don't care. There's no absorbing of information. The mainstream press is all about representing the interests of the wealthy, of people that have power, of the healthcare industry. I mean, how many ads do you see on these networks that are for pharmaceuticals? So they don't represent you. They're never going to learn and change and talk about what's best for the people. The majority of what they're going to do is going to be presenting the news in a way that still protects their wealth and their power. So that is the only reason we continue to have these conversations about Medicare for All, because they don't want it to see it passed. All right, let me save some more super chats for later, because I want to get to the Scott. I'm stuttering a lot, but it's because this coffee. It's got me crazy. The Scott Walker story, because this was I think this kind of flew under the radar a little bit this week, but I want to talk about it. So during a recent interview, former governor, actually, let me start this over again. So during a recent interview, former governor of Wisconsin, Scott Walker, clearly appeared to say that he's afraid Bernie Sanders can win Wisconsin. Now, this is something you don't normally hear Republicans speak honestly about or admit, but he knows his state. So let me show you why he thinks this, because I think this is important. So Walker says that Wisconsinites respond to authentic candidates. He says that of all the three leading Democratic candidates, he's most concerned about Bernie Sanders winning the Democratic nomination. Quote, like Trump, people believe Bernie is fighting for them. His ideas are the most extreme, but he's authentic. He doesn't hide on the substance. So that's it. I mean, that is... This is exactly why Bernie will win. Because he is like Trump in his authenticity. So Trump's authentic in a way, but in a way he's also not. Because if he was actually authentic, he would be a little more open about how he loves tax cuts for the rich, for example. But he's not going to be honest about policy. But he's more authentic in his reactions to things. Whereas Bernie Sanders is just an authentic person through and through. And on top of that, also supports policy that the vast majority of Americans support. This is what people like Scott Walker are worried about. Bernie is authentic. So even if you don't agree with him on everything, you know, looking at Bernie's 40-year record, that he will actually fight for you because he's been saying the same thing for 40 years. Now, let's also take a look at this. Not that. This. Who won Wisconsin in 2016? Bernie Sanders. So when you're talking about who can possibly win these states that Hillary lost to Trump in 2016, Bernie won almost all of them. Wisconsin's a big one here. 56.6 to 43%. It wasn't even close. So Scott Walker, for once in his life, is actually right about something. Bernie Sanders can win Wisconsin. He will win Wisconsin. And he will go on to win the nomination and the presidency. Because despite all the media working against him, Bernie Sanders is an honest guy. When people actually see him on screen and they're actually talking to him, it's obvious he's not some crazy dude. This is a guy who's authentic, believes in what he's fighting for, has fought for the same thing for 40 years, and will continue to fight for people. Even if you don't agree with him on all the issues, you know he's dedicated to people. That's what his fight is about. And he's not going to compromise with the wealthiest. He's not going to compromise with massive corporations. He never has. So as president, it will be a complete transformation from what people are used to when it comes to a presidency. Because as he has said in the past, he will not only be the president, he will also be the organizer in chief. He will act as somebody activating movements from outside the White House. So while he's the person working within the White House to get things done, he will be engaging and activating movements outside the White House to put pressure on politicians to support his agenda. So he has said in the past, for example, in West Virginia, if Joe Manchin, senator from West Virginia, Democratic senator, doesn't support something like Medicare for all, Bernie will go to that state, will go to West Virginia, rally Joe Manchin's voters there to put pressure on Joe Manchin and potentially support a primary challenger to Joe Manchin if Manchin does not support Medicare for all. So that's just one example that Bernie has discussed he will do. So this is completely different. You have the potential here to actually have a president that will be in the White House fighting for you. No more compromising between the wealthy and the people, which always leads to compromise that is actually in the full benefit of the wealthy and the powerful. A Bernie Sanders presidency, no more compromise. No working with the wealthy or the powerful at all. It's all about representing the people. That's what he will do. It's just, it's funny to see people like Scott Walker acknowledge this. But he's right. It's impossible to deny. All right. Oh, shoot. There was a clip I want to share with that too. So let me kind of fit this in here. There we go. And to support the fact that Bernie Sanders is indeed authentic, Here's a clip from a recent town hall that he had. This is in Iowa, and it just shows you how real this man is. Watch.
The ideas that I am fighting for now didn't come to me yesterday. You know, I didn't look at a poll which said, hey, you know what? 71% of Democrats support Medicare for all. Bernie, you should support Medicare for all. I supported Medicare for all 30 years ago. Nobody told me that it was a good idea to stand with the working class of this country. I've been on more picket lines, I expect, than all my opponents combined over the last 30 years. That's what I do. So I answer your question, Sean, in this sense. Having a long record gives people the understanding that these ideas that I'm talking about, they are in my guts. They are in my heart. This is who I am as a human being, and it ain't gonna change. I'm not gonna meet with some wealthy donors who tell me that these ideas are not good. My constituency is the working class of this country. I come from the working class of this country, and as President of the United States, I will fight for the working class of this country. Thank you all very much.
There you go. He's the real deal. All right. Yeah, I'm just gonna do. All right, I'm pretty much done. There's one more story I might just save for this weekend, or if I do it at all. But let me just do super chats now. Even though I think I got a lot of them, but if you got super chat, get them in now, right now. I do have to get out of here at some point, so get them in immediately, and I'll try to take some random chats as well in the YouTube chat. All right, where was I? Okay. Pat the Batman fan, thanks for your super chat, says Chuck Todd looks like he should be the manager of a TGI Fridays at best. Can't you just see his picture hanging on the wall by the register? Yeah. At the same time, I don't want to, I'm not going to deride working class people. There's nothing wrong with being a manager at a TGI Fridays. But the fact is, Chuck Todd is just not qualified to be hosting an MSNBC show. But then again, a lot of them aren't. It's not like Chuck Todd is like uniquely unqualified for the job. It's just that he is uniquely terrible at selling the corporate line. So the other hosts, Joe Scarborough, Mika Brzezinski, what's his name? Chris Matthews, are much better at selling the corporate line. Chuck Todd, you could just see right through him. So that's kind of the problem with Chuck Todd, is he's just not good at what he's supposed to be doing. Jaguar Rose says, no question, just love your show. Thank you. And $10 super chat. Very kind of you. Thank you. Florida Fly Fishing says, I talked my mom out of Pete and into Bernie. Awesome. That's awesome. This is what more people need to do. You got family members, show them old videos I got comparing like Bernie and Biden, for example, or show them old clips of Bernie. There are so many ways. Actually, I would love for you to share, maybe in the chat, because I likely won't see your chat. But share with other people how you talked your mom out of that, because that whatever you did is what other people should also be doing. So it's important to not only share or not only push these ideas out there and share them with your friends and family, but also share if you did convince someone to support Bernie, or if you did, I shouldn't say convince, because it shouldn't need convincing. If you did if you did properly inform your friends and family on Bernie Sanders, what did you use to do it? Like, what was it that made them come over? So I think you should share that, and that will help people or that will help people in their own lives. Jesus Amoro says, next time do a segment on participatory economy. Okay, I may. I'm more of like I don't generally do videos on like concepts. I generally cover news and politics, but I hear you. Jesus Tomorrow also says Lula has been freed. Yeah, I did hear this. Let me just double check that. There you go. Let's check it out. Brazil's former president Lula walks free from prison after Supreme Court ruling. Workers' Party leader has been held for 580 days for corruption. Court rules incarceration unlawful until appeals exhausted. Awesome. So, Michael Brooks is the expert on this, but I'm going to read more about this, or more about his freeing, I should say, and potentially do a story on this because this is important. Awesome stuff. Phil Spargo says, thanks for supporting this great human being. Which one are you talking about, Bernie? I assume you're talking about Bernie. Yeah. It doesn't take much for me to support. I mean, I just call it as I see it, right? I think it's obvious. I would love a politician, or I should say a leader, like Bernie Sanders in Canada. We don't really have that. But those kind of people are like once in a lifetime. It's so rare to have someone who has like a 40-year record saying the same thing, and no one at all is hearing them out, putting them on television until they run for president. I mean, occasionally you would see Bernie Sanders on. He would make the occasional appearance, but his full, who he actually was over the course of his entire life, or who he has been over the course of his life, was never really explored until he ran for president. So there were so many years that went by where Bernie just has been on the correct side of issues, and it was never really recognized publicly, or I should say, widely, that it wasn't just like, it wasn't like just the Iraq War or just income inequality, but it was like every single issue he was a leader on. He was there before everybody else. He was fighting for it before everybody else was. None of that really became clear until 2016. And I think a lot of people are just now being caught up to it. Fulcrum the Brave says, I'm stuff. Okay. Thank you for your super chat. Brian B says, check out the tech billionaire article I posted. Where would you... I don't know how I would find your link, to be quite honest with you. But if you're in the chat and you saw Brian B post something, check it out. Phil just came back saying, yes, David, Bernie. You're welcome. Though I feel weird being thanked to supporting him. It didn't take any convincing. But yeah, gotta support him. Who else is there? All right. I'm glad I took a lot of super chats during the chat, or during the stream, because it actually worked out a lot better. All right. I'll be back. I'll be back next week, obviously, on Friday. Hopefully a little more rested. I've been moving for the past week, so I'm tired. I'm kind of all over the place. But I hope you enjoyed the stream. I will be doing more Twitch. Let me get this up as well, though. Boom. Look at that new graphic. Isn't that sweet? therationalnational.com/join. That gets you to the Patreon page. Support me on Patreon, YouTube. I guarantee you, I haven't checked yet. Maybe I can check right now. I guarantee you this video has been demonetized. Almost all my live streams get demonetized because I say something or I share something that is, yep, demonetized. Unbelievable. Or I should say totally believable. Yeah, this video is demonetized. So, look, become a patron. If you don't want to become a patron, you can give a one-time donation. The links are below in the video. PayPal.me/David Dole. You can send a PayPal donation there. This is the only way I can continue what I'm doing. because we get demonetized constantly, and I rely on viewer support to keep going. So thank you so much for donating, for becoming a member, and you allow me to keep doing this work. All right. Thanks for coming. And oh yeah, I was gonna say, I keep saying this every week, but I'm serious this time because I just moved and I have great internet. As you can see, this time I actually streamed in 1080p. I want to do more on Twitch. So if you're not following me on Twitch yet, again, link below the video. You'll see the Twitch link. Follow me on there and you'll be notified whenever I go live. All right. Thanks again for coming, and see you next Friday.